appreciate the kind introduction and the opening remark and the cap of yesterday's event. So it was really useful and helpful. Also, I want to take this time to send my appreciation and gratitude to the unsung heroes, our colleagues that are behind the scenes that too many of us probably would not see and hear from. But they're the ones that are helping us today and throughout this symposium. And a special shout out also to my colleagues at the Thiqa department. They really are the backbone of this event in terms of logistics and technical, services. With that in mind, I hope you're excited as much as I am to be here with you today to discuss the Development Finance Institutions initiatives towards SDG alignment. And so what are SDGs? The Sustainable Development Goals are a collection of 17 global objectives adopted by the United Nations back in 2015. And the goal at the time, and it still is to eradicate poverty, protect the planet, and build a peaceful and prosperous world. As I just said, the SDGs comprise of 17 goals and roughly 169 targets, such as the elimination of poverty and hunger, fighting climate change, supporting decent growth and work, and creating sustainable cities and communities. And for many organizations, particularly development finance institutions or DFIs, aligning with SDGs is a way to make a positive development impact. And SDGs are becoming increasingly important to investors as well, as they represent a material ESG or environmental, social, and governance perspective that investors take into account as part of their fiduciary duty. There's a strong business case for investing in companies aligned with SDGs, which are shown to secure steady returns for investors by creating a competitive advantage of their portfolio. So the opportunity to advance sustainable development goals is a strong motivation for all types of institutions, and particularly DFIs, to integrate sustainability into strategies and operations. So that's a little bit about SDGs. And what I like to do now is share with you what is the IDFC, but of course, without too much detail. But the IDFC, the International Development Finance Club, was created back in 2011. And it is the leading group of 26 national and regional development banks from all over the world, the majority of which are active in emerging markets. The IDFC is the largest provider of public development and climate finance globally, with close to $4 trillion in combined assets and annual commitments above the $800 billion mark. And this includes more than $160 billion towards climate finance. IDFC members have the unique function of supporting domestic policies while transferring international priorities into their own constituencies. IDFC members are aligned with and work together to implement the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement agendas through the IDFC and in close partnerships with other development bank networks members, join forces as a platform to really promote and leverage sustainable development investment worldwide. Now, the IDFC works with, as I said, many different development networks, but the main objectives include knowledge sharing and capacity building on measuring and mainstreaming climate and SDG finance, pursuing advocacy on the role of public development banks and the redirection alignment of financial flows towards the sustainable development goals in the Paris agreements, and increasing cooperation between members in easing access to project preparation and project financing. So with that in mind, this kind of brings us to today's focus for today's session, which will highlight the current dedicated study that the IDFC members have commissioned, and it talks about the SDG alignment. And then the aim was to provide the IDFC members with a conceptual framework as well as practical ways, tools, and processes to implement it. This study will consider members' specificities and their mandates, their strategies, their capacities. It will also propose a methodology with options to map SDG impacts and will support the operationalization of the SDGs into members' practices. This work is perfectly in line with the dialogue initiated between the public development banks and private investors, and the willingness of both parts to develop a common language around the definition, tracking, and accounting of both climate and SDG aligned finance and investments. Now, I am privileged to be among today's panelists, and I would like to briefly introduce them to you. We start off with the IDFC Secretariat. Her name is Ms. Marie Garçon. Marie Garçon works at the AFD, which is the French Development Finance Agency, and is currently the Partnership Officer for the Secretariat of the International Development Finance Club, the IDFC. The IDFC has been chaired since October 2017 by AFD, and that's where the IDFC Secretariat is actually hosted. Prior to this position, she was also a Senior Investment Officer in Proparco's Manufacturing, Agro Industry and Services Division, particularly in charge of agriculture and agro-industrial projects. She has also worked in Johannesburg and in the Structured Finance Division for AFD. Marie is a graduate at the Essex Business School, and she previously worked in internal audit and consulting before joining the AFD group. Our second panelist is Ms. Marian Juper. She's the head of Sustainable Development Analysis and Opinion Team at the AFD. The AFD team issues an independent opinion on project SDG alignment and project impact assessment. Marianne has over 20 years of experience as a task team leader in AFD head office and in the field, particularly in Turkey. And she's occupied a similar position at the Inter-American Development Bank. Marianne has a long experience in banking and microfinance sector, as well as in the financing of local authorities. She has worked in Middle East, Latin America, and Africa with different types of clients, from municipalities, housing and urban development companies to government-owned banks, offering different types of support, non-sovereign and sovereign lending to technical assistance programs. She's participated in policy dialogue in both South Africa, Mexico, and in Turkey. She has a deep understanding of climate change policy, and the extensive on-the-ground experience enables her to better challenge project design and impact assessment with her current position. Our next panelist is Dr. Kadek Artha. He's the chief economist at PTSMI Indonesia. Before joining PTSMI, Dr. Kadek was head of the LPEM, the Institute for Economic and Social Research, University of Indonesia, and lecturer at the Department of Economics in the University of Indonesia. He earned his bachelor's degree from the Faculty of Economics, University of Indonesia. He continued taking master in Department of Economics in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands. He received his PhD in economics from the Groningen University and wrote a dissertation on financial crises, impact on central bank independence, output, and inflation. He has some publications on financial crisis, central bank independence, and labor market in reputable journals. He also was a lecturer at the Amsterdam University of Applied Science and a lecturer at politics, psychology, law, and economics at the University of Amsterdam. Our next panelist is Ms. Nihal Ozkan. She's the senior manager at Loan Analysis Department and, of course, the president of the SDG Mapping on Loans Working Group within the Turkish Bank for Development. She has a bachelor's degree from Istanbul University back in 2009, and she earned her CPA in 2016. In her professional career, she started as an auditor and began continuing working with TSKB since 2011 in the field of financial analysis and sector analysis. In addition to being an analyst, she also took an active role in firm valuation studies and supported corporate finance processes during that time. Since 2018, she started capacity building and sustainability in SDG-related processes. In 2020, she was leading the team that carried out the TSKB SDG mapping of loans project. Afterwards, she managed the implementation, development, and reporting of this work. Since 2021, she's been chairing the SDG mapping on loans working group, which is affiliated to the TSKB Sustainability Management Committee. She's been actively following IDFC SDG Alignment Mapping Studies since 2020, as well as TSKB's Integrated Annual Report SDG-related KPI realizations. So we welcome her as well to our panel today. And we have with us our panelist, Ms. Safira Patel. She's the head of operations and evaluations at the Development Bank of South Africa. She's worked in the development finance, environmental, and evaluation sector for over 16 years. And I said she currently heads the operations evaluation unit and the environmental social governance unit at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Safira's areas of expertise include monitoring and evaluation for development impact investment, environmental, social due diligence, climate and green finance, the just transition and sustainable development. Safira's current focus is on using ESG and monitoring and evaluation to facilitate a just transition towards a low carbon economy. And last but not least, we have our very own Dr. Mohammed Al-Yami. He's the director of the Development Effectiveness Department here at ICD. Dr. Mohammed has 20 years of experience in different sectors, with mostly in evaluation and development impact. As the director of the department, he's been leading this effort since 2014. Dr. Mohammed worked as a postdoctoral research with a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School back in 2017, 2018, and he holds his PhD in evaluation from Western Michigan University with an emphasis on evaluation standards and program evaluation. He holds 2 master's degrees, one in marketing management and the other in human resource development. In 1999, he completed his bachelor's studies, BA at King Saud University in Riyadh. His research interests are development effectiveness, impact evaluation, and evaluation standards. So that's a little bit about our panelists today. And they're all really coming to us with great backgrounds, and hopefully can have good insights into today's session. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do now is I give the floor to the IDFC Secretariat, Ms. Marie Garson, and she will highlight and share with us a little bit about what the IDFC does, who the members maybe are, and then what was the reasoning behind this SDG alignment study, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges that the members are looking for from this study. Ms. Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Talal. Dear colleagues, this is a real pleasure to be here with you today, and I thank especially IDC for organizing this webinar on SDG alignment. So as you mentioned, IDFC is a club of 27 members now, as we welcome a new member last year, which is African Finance Corporation from Nigeria. The main objective of the club are threefold: the knowledge sharing, as you mentioned, advocacy, common voice, and the cooperation. And the way we are working, we are working on 5 thematic, 5 working group, I would say: climate finance, biodiversity, SDG alignment, gender equality, and a more transversal one, which is cooperation for development. And IDFC has also a specificity because we have a climate facility that has been launched 3 years ago now, and with the objective to support and to the club mission, for example, to finance capacity building programs, to develop joint projects, to increase knowledge sharing, to enable access to international climate finance. So if we focus now on the SDG alignment working group, so climate has always been the strong marker of the club, but in 2018, the club decided to adopt a broader agenda with the SDGs. So in 2018 and 2019, IDFC partnered with a think tank, the Center for Global Development, to launch a first report on the key success factors and the key challenges in implementing SDG by members. And then a year later, in 2019, IDFC more substantially engaged with SDG alignment. And building from the climate experience, the club launched a survey on the members' approaches to characterize SDG compatibility of activities and investment. Then, in 2020, IDFC analyzed SDG alignment with a mainstreaming perspective, and we organized 5 sub-working groups, and all the results of the report from this working group were consolidated in a position paper that has been published during the Finance in Commons Summit in 2020. So the 5 sub-working group were first, PDB's mandate, and key recommendation here being to get more support from the government, and for example, the need to have an explicit mention of sustainable development in PDB's mandate, or the promotion of SDG-related incentivizing mechanism. Second sub-working group, second topic was on regulation. Key recommendation being here that the regulatory framework should facilitate PDB's unique role in the promotion of SDGs and their counter-cyclical role in times of emergency or crisis situation. Third topic, third sub-working group was on business model. The club looked at innovative business model as well as the impact of COVID-19 crisis on business model. And the key conclusion here being that non-financial instruments are key to generate deeper impact, that during COVID-19, PDBs managed to adapt their business model, to adapt their operation, to be closer to their clients' needs, and also to deploy innovative tools. And so that this innovative tool should be expanded during the Build Back Better period. The report of this sub-working group showed also the challenges of aligning clients and private sector intermediaries with SDGs, and also the challenge of translating SDGs principles into operation action across the organization, so the need to get more methodology. The fourth working group was on the SDG framework. And the key recommendation here was that the SDG framework should cover the entire portfolio. It should also be consistent with the multi-dimensional impact of the SDGs. It should provide quantified synthesis reflecting the positive or negative balance of a project. And of course, it should facilitate and influence at the end the board decision. This framework should also be readjusted or refined with the ex post assessment tool that has to be implemented as well. And then the fifth working group, the fifth topic that was launched was on international development financial architecture. Key recommendation here being to promote a better access to concessional finance, and to promote also a coordinated approach to make the best use of the resources and added value of the various stakeholders. So as a conclusion of this significant work in 2020, the club sees the need to define what it means to be aligned with the SDG for the members, and also the need for practical and standardized tool to characterize which investment are aligned and with SDG and which are not. So it brings us to 2021 and the launch of the SDG Alignment Study. So the club decided to launch this study to get a conceptual common framework on SDG alignment, as well as tools, ways, processes to implement it. So the study is currently ongoing. This is carried out by Natixis Bank, the Green and Sustainable Hub of Natixis. And as you mentioned, Talal, the study has to take into account the member specificities, of course, because we all have different mandate, different scope of intervention, different capacity, different strategy. So it has to take all this into account to support the operationalization of the SDGs into members' practices. So basically, in terms of methodology and content of the report, there are three main parts. First one being a definition and principles. Second one is on stock taking. So the consultant did a stock taking exercise both on the what is existing in terms of tools or framework on the market, I would say, and a stock taking on IDFC members' practices, IDFC members' approaches. And then the third part is is bringing some tools and recommendation for the club. So the consultant did some interviews, quite significant number of interviews with IDFC members, obviously, 15 of them, and also with external stakeholders, meaning investors, NGOs, international organizations, credit rating agencies as well. So as I was saying, the study is currently ongoing, so we cannot enter too much into detail, but I can provide you with first insight of this study. So on the part related to the definition and principles about alignment, what we can say that PDBs should contribute to SDGs, and contribution means to support the SDG national and local roadmap. So this is a kind of key principle. Alignment should be looked at a dynamic and forward-looking process based on interrelation, because we all know that there are interlinkages between all SDGs. The analysis should be on more holistic than project level only financing, and should be centered also on counterparts progress towards SDG achievement. We can note also that PDBs can act at three different levels, kind of three pillars. The first one being external engagement, then at the entity level, and then at the activity level. So external engagement, this is because public development banks are part of an ecosystem, and they have to act as a SDG enabler or contributor in this ecosystem. Entity level, it refers to the policy and processes implemented by the banks at the strategic level. We can think about the mandate, the funding policy of the bank, the risk policy of the bank, the HR policy, as well as disclosure and transparency policy, etc. And then the third level is at activity level. It's referring here to the operation, so the product and the services offered by the member. In terms of stock taking of IDFC members' practices, obviously the report showed that SDG integration is quite heterogeneous. It reflects the mandate specificities, size, and geographical constraints of the members. The report identifies also a lot of very good practices that could be replicated by other members. The report showed that many members have been exploring SDG targets through SDG mapping. So even if it's useful as a mobilization tool or as an analytic tool for the bank, we know that mapping is not alignment, so it can be a first step, but it's not the alignment per se. And the report showed also that many members are using ex-ante environmental, social, and governance assessment, which is very good, but we know that impact assessment and disclosure policy practices could be improved as well, as they often fail to establish a link between the impact and the financing and the contribution to SDGs. So the third part of the report, and a very interesting one, is about the tools and recommendation that could be used by the members to progress towards SDG alignment. So there are some tools to better integrate SDGs. There is a tool as well to better diagnose, so to make a diagnosis to identify what to stop, what to transform, what to boost, and what to add. It can be in terms of product of the bank, but it can be also in terms of activities, in terms of strategy. So every activities, tools, and product of the bank could be looked through this tool of diagnosis, and then it will allow to define some action plan, to design some action plan. And then there are also some tools to implement and to act with appropriate methodology, as SDG taxonomy or accountability template. And the report worked also on a fictional case study aiming to help public development banks translating recommendation into action. So very concrete step-by-step case study to help members to progress in terms of SDG alignment. And the report brings also some ideas on indicators that could be used for a common reporting framework. You may know that IDFC is reporting annually on the climate finance. And so we could imagine also this the same reporting at some point on SDG alignment. Maybe last word about where we stand now on the study. So the study is currently ongoing, and we are entering in a very interesting phase, because we will start testing the tools and the concept that have been suggested by the consultant. So if needed, the tool will be refined or redesigned, and to make sure that we can come to a collective roadmap, tools, principles at the club level, and then at the second step to be able to share them with other stakeholders, obviously. I think I will stop here for my presentation on the SDG Alignment Study. And of course, I'm available for any question.
Marie, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us this really comprehensive understanding of how this report came about and what was the reasoning behind why the members wanted to commission this study. And what's interesting, I think, is the fact that you have 26 or 27 members now. They're all different mandates, different capacities, yet they're all interested in really understanding how they can align their efforts towards SDG attainment, at the while still try to figure out how they can work together. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably the first study of its kind that's far-reaching, where you have so many different development finance institutions that are taking part in it. So I'm quite excited to hear now from some of the panelists, and they're all member institutions within the IDFC. And I'll start off with just in alphabetical order. So I'll start off with the first name in alphabetical order, and I'll go with Dr. Kadek from TPSMI Indonesia. Dr. Kadek, if you can highlight to us your institution's efforts into SDG alignment and how this potential study, once it's public, will fit into that in terms of your institution's operations. Dr. Kadek, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Talal, and good mornings, all the participants of the symposiums. Let me share the screens to introduce PTSMI. PTSMI is the state-owned enterprise owned by the Ministry of Finance of Indonesia. We have a mandate to be a catalyst for infrastructure financings in Indonesia. And we have three pillars actually for our business. The first is innovative, unique, and flexible financing products. We also provide project development and advisory as enablers in infrastructure investments. And we also have a strategic partnership for domestic and international institutions. As mentioned previously by Mary, the IDFC Secretariats, by definition as SDG alignment, it doesn't mean that how we our company aligns with the SDGs, but also we have the external engagements, how we aligns SDGs and follows the national program, including the governments. We can see here the governments of Indonesia already have regulatory frameworks by presidential regulations. So at the national level and also at the regional levels, the government have action plans. So the progress of the SDGs at the national levels, government already mainstreaming SDGs in government planning documents, and then launching national action plans for SDGs. And at the provincial levels, some of the provincial governments already have a regulation for the implementation, and the governments of Indonesia also involved in the leadership of Global Forum for SDGs and also involvement in the G20. For the PTSMI itself, we have a concrete actions for climate change and SDG alignments. The first, we established sustainable finance divisions in 2016 to finance renewable energy project related. And then second, PTSMI is the first accredited entity, GCF accreditations in Southeast Asia. We have also very practical blended finance platforms. This is called as SDG Indonesia 1. I will stressing on SDG Indonesian platform later on. And then we issued the first corporate green bonds and impact reports in Indonesia. Also, we develop and implement guidelines of environments and safety management frameworks. This is about the SDGs Indonesia 1. This is a blended finance platforms. We offer 4 facilities. The first is SDG development facilities to improve the feasibility of SDG projects. And then second, we provide SDG de-risking facilities to reduce the risk of the project. So we attract more private capitals to involve in SDGs related projects. And then we give SDG financing facilities and also SDG equity funds. We have a collaboration with the 34 partners, and then so far our commitment is around 3.3 billion US dollars. This is the examples of how the collaborative structure and schemes between the PTSMI and AFD and European Unions to finance private sector project related to SDGs in renewable energy and low carbon efficient energy generation, energy efficiency, non-energy gas, greenhouse gas reductions, and also particular sectors like water, waste, and then transport, infrastructure, and urban developments. We blend the funds, for example, grants to finance the feasibility studies and also for de-risking tools, and also we give loans to finance 2 kind of project here. You can see clean water in East Java and also biomass projects. This is actually the actions we already taken for aligning our business to SDGs related to the studies. First of all, I would like to appreciate IDFC for finishing or conducting a study. in our opinions, the study is well conducted, and in terms of the structures, methodology, and also in terms of tools of implementation, this is a very applicable. I like the way of the study give us a definition and also frameworks. The study divided the actions into 3 levels. The first is the external engagements, how we engage more stakeholders in the SDGs alignments business or projects. And then second, at the entity levels, how actually internally of the SDG of IDFC members make a policy and also procedures related to strategic actions. And then at the activities level, how IDFC members offer product and services. This is at the operational level. By dividing these 3 levels to the classifications, we also found from the study, from the stock takings tools, we found that at the entity levels, on average, the IDFC members have good actions actually in fundings of the SDG alignment projects, and also try to align of the SDGs into the business operations. And then at the activities levels, we can see from the result that on average, IDFC members more conducting assistancy, technical assistance, knowledge sharings in their activities, and also adopt ENS assessments and safeguard. So actually, this is a very good mappings, I would say, because we have also some aspects, for example, the use of the taxonomy, and then the sectoral mapping, sectoral SDG mapping, it should be improved as well. So this is a very good mapping, so that the study come up with the operational tools, which is can be implemented and tested in the later step. I think it helps us to give a guidance and also frameworks and tools to strengthen our alignments to SDGs, especially for PTSMI. That's all my introductions about our company PTSMI, and also the relevancy of this of the study with our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kadek, and it's quite nice to hear that you've noticed, you took note of the effort between IDFC members when it comes to the entity levels, and how on average, as you said, they're working towards SDG, or they're funding SDG alignment. So that's very important, I think. With that, I'd like to go ahead and go to Marian Juper, and also, if you care, Marian, the same thing, tell us a little bit about AFD and the work that you take there, you lead there in terms of SDG alignment, and how do you foresee this study fitting into your operations and the way you do business. Marian, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Talal, and many thanks for the invitation. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you to share about our experience and learn from you. So from AFD point of view, French Development Agency, SDG alignment is a topic of very much interest. But what it means and how it can change the way we work was not crystal clear at the beginning, because at the first place, we saw it as a public development bank. SDG are already the core of our mandate. So we questioned what did we need to change. And we decided to work on SDG trajectories, on operation and processes, and also on coalition and external topic. Today, I want to focus on the alignment of operations, as far as it is the art of SDG alignment, meaning the alignment of our operations with finance. I want to share our experience on this today. So in 2014, we designed an internal mechanism with the aim of fostering impacts on sustainable development of the operations we finance. This goes beyond ESG safeguards. It is called our Sustainable Development Analysis and Opinion Mechanism. And this was in 2014. With the adoption of the SDG in 2015, we refined it to make it work around 3 objectives. The first one is do not harm. So avoid financing SDG misaligned operations. That is those operations that may have a significant negative impact on one or more SDG. The second objective was to optimize positive impact. As I was saying, it was created to foster impact of the operations on sustainable development. So optimize positive impact of the operation we finance. And the third objective was, and for us this is the most important, to foster integration and interrelation among the dimension of sustainable development. And this is the spirit of the 2030 agenda, which are composed of 17 indivisible goals. And this is the, I would say, the originality of our tool is that we look at how environmental, social, economic, and governance aspects interact in order to avoid short-sighted operation and also to manage difficult trade-offs because they are arising whenever you finance a project. For example, between economic and social goals, environmental and social impact, and all. So I want to stress 3 characteristics of that SDAO mechanism. So first, if you can go next slide, please. It's just like one picture. Yeah. So first one is that the methodology we developed is in-house. We choose to focus on 6 dimensions: biodiversity, climate, social, gender, economic, and governance, which reflects and covers the SDGs. We choose to focus on those 6 and not 17 to make it more manageable for the teams, but they embrace it all, SDGs. Second characteristic is that it's really embedded into our internal process and credit cycle. And it applies to almost all of the financing we're making, except budgetary supports and small financing. And this is key for us for the theory of change for which that tool was created. It has 2 legs. First leg is a sustainable development analysis of the project that is done ex ante by the operational teams on a common methodology, that in-house methodology. It is qualitative, but it's for sure documented by feasibility study, by environmental and social due diligence, and it's based on the logical framework, including project result indicators and way to measure it. And so this is for us the mainstreaming pillar of sustainable development within operations by systematically questioning impact on each of the dimensions, operation by operation. So this was the first leg. The second leg of the mechanism is a sustainable development opinion that is issued by an independent team based in the strategy department, actually the team I'm heading. And that opinion is discussed at the credit committee, and it's included in the board document, board project documents. So it's really the independent sustainable development opinion. This informs decision-making bodies on SDG alignment and impact, SDG impact on sustainable development. This is really key in our decision-making process. And this independent team is also challenging the sustainable analysis that is done by operational at identification stage, as well as at the credit committee. So all along the credit cycle, these for allowing progress on impacts within the credit cycle. The third characteristic that I wanted to highlight is that it is linked to our result indicator framework. So we are really trying to strengthen the link of that ex-ante impact evaluation with all the monitoring and evaluation, and then ex-post assessment. Because at the end, what is of interest is the actual impact in the ground. So we're doing like that, I would say, continuity and backbone between ex-ante impact evaluation to ex-post evaluation. These to strengthen the link with accountability and monitoring and evaluation, and also for us to fine-tune the parameter of our ex-ante assessment. And in that purpose, we very recently introduced an ex-post sustainable development analysis that is done at completion, and that is also used by our ex-post evaluation team to evaluate the real impact of the project. So how does it look like? We have a detailed analysis table, dimension by dimension, raising question. And then you have that rating graph that is presented in the project document and giving a snapshot of the expected impact on all the 6 sustainable dimensions. It really visually presents, as you see, the interactions between the different dimension and SDG, and it fosters dialogue on that, on impact, positive and negative, and on interactions. With the same aim is do not harm and stop doing operations that may have a significant impact, or accept a slight negative impact, but trying to reduce it at maximum, and amplify positive impact. So really to sum up on that is it's considered our SDG alignment tool, and it helps us in that SDG alignment of operation as we define it, avoid negative impact, optimize positive impact, and foster integration and interrelation and dialogue among the interrelation of SDG. Our expectation towards the IDFC study, I would say we're really enthusiastic, and we really see that study as an opportunity, because as I was saying, our methodologies that we have like for 8 years now is in-house. And what we really want, and we're really eager to learn from peers and market practices and tools to improve our tool, and also to share it with peers. We already see 3 areas of improvement. The first one I was briefly describing is really strengthening the link between ex-ante impact assessment and ex-post assessment to assess actual impact. And that was really linked also with all the topic of this great symposium on evaluation, from ex-ante to ex-post evaluation. And we want also to use it more in the dialogue with our counterparts and clients on sustainable development, to really question around impacts, question around interaction and interlinkage between SDG, and discuss on the ground on opportunity to optimize and trade off and decide around that. And we also starting to enter in and tackle the topic that Mary mentioned of SDG alignment of entities. So going from, we're already like considering operational alignment within its context for sure, but we're also progressively questioning the entity alignment. And that's really something we want in the future to include in our ex-ante sustainable analysis methodology. So from operational alignment to entity alignment. We really want to build alliance to exchange on our experience and controversy, because as you may imagine, we experience quite tough discussions when we sometimes have this snapshot of impact. And so we have to decide, make trade-off around controversial topics, weighting positive impact, but looking at the negative. So we have like controversial topics that have been animating many debates, like on biomass, for example. And so we would really be happy to share with peers, like actually our practice around discussing and deciding on SDG impact. And we are also, last point, really convinced that this kind of tool that you are all developing are a way to direct more finance towards sustainable development and towards sustainable development impacts. And so we are looking forward to potential coalitions of banks such as IDFC to raise interest and around this topic, to mobilize more and more financing towards fully aligned SDG operations. On our side, I just wanted to finish stressing that this SDAO mechanism is also instrumental in our funding strategy. It's now used in our SDG bond structure and presented in our SDG bond framework that has been issued starting October 2020. And that's really the backbone of that framework that allow us on one side to select assets to be financed on the bond, and then communicate on impacts of the assets financed on the bond. These together with the mapping of contributions that Marie was mentioning too. So really, thanks a lot. I'm super excited and happy to have this panel and go further in the discussion around our different tools on SDG alignment.
Thank you, Mary. And really, I think many things caught my interest with what you just shared with us. I'm really fond of your independent opinion that you take back to your committee and your board. And perhaps if we have some chance later to talk a little bit about that. And secondly, the graph, that's quite interesting. It is a nice visual to see for those of our colleagues that are away from, especially the business officers, for you to kind of show them something like that. And maybe we can even touch base on that a little later. Our next panelist is Ms. Nihal Özkan from the Turkish Development Bank. Again, the same question to you, Nihal, is can you share with us a little bit about what the Turkish Development Bank is doing? And how do you foresee this study helping you with your operations and your expectations from the study? The floor is yours, Nihal.
Of course. Thank you very much, Mr. Talal. It's a great honor to participate today. And I would like to thank you to IDFC Secretariat and ISDB for this remarkable event. And of course, to all panelists for their contribution. On the behalf of TSKB, I can strongly say that these collaborative initiations, know-how exchange will lead us forward as being as SDG enablers. In my part, I will briefly present the progress we achieved through the years by our SDG-related initiatives. And then I would like to talk about our expectations from these valuable progress. Let's start with our current situation. In the early 2000s, TSKB activated its environmental management system. Then since in 2018, SDG mapping has been integrated to our sustainability journey. Currently, our SDG practices continuing within the scope of SDG mapping on loans working group. We are also pleased to have participated in the IDFC SDG working group since its beginning. We are working with DFIs, as we all know, and their focus on sustainability in recent years has an impact on TSKB's strategy, especially focus on green and sustainable projects. We may say briefly, TSKB is quite advanced in sustainability-related issues for many aspects. As of today, TSKB stands on a position where we perform our SDG mapping for our activities, but particularly for lending processes. By doing that, we can measure SDG contribution of our outstanding risk balance and also our new loan disbursements. In our loan appraisal committee, we are taking into consideration these SDG mapping outputs. We closely monitor the results of these mapping and have a dynamic structure that not only measures the SDG contribution of our loans, but also we would like to set realistic targets to move the current efforts to a better position. On the other hand, as all panelists underlined, we have more room for progress, and we would like to develop on positive negative impact measurement. And also we would like to integrate SDGs on whole credit approval processes. And we would like to also use SDGs for risk assessment purposes. So we aim to expand our SDG-related financing and develop future SDG-related strategies in all of our activities. To give a few examples about our SDG ambition, SDG-related KPIs, which we also stated in our integrated report. One is we would like to keep the ratio of SDG-linked portfolio to total risk portfolio at 90% or above in the coming years. And also, secondly, we would like to keep the ratio of loans extended on the basis of climate and environment-related SDGs. We are doing such works also. We have a climate working group in our bank. So we classified the SDGs as they related climate and environmental aspects, and we would like to keep that ratio to all our risk portfolio at a level of 60% or above. And finally, we would like to allocate about $8 billion US dollars SDG-linked loans by the end of 2030. At the end of 2021, we performed in line with these targets, and we successfully completed the assurance process with our independent audit firm. In line with these valuable efforts, Natixis report and all the other efforts, we are planning to prepare a method paper also of our SDG perspectives, such our precious colleagues in KfW did, and they published on their website also. Finally, I would like to mention about our innovative SDG loan model. This model was first initiated by our young colleagues from TSKB, and the loan model has been further developed and finalized with support of our TSKB's subsidiary Escarus. As you may know, TSKB Sustainability Consultancy firm. In 2020, this is an Excel-based evaluation tool, which is designed for local companies in Turkey. Through the model, we make a self-assessment process, both in economic, social, and environmental aspects. As a result of this self-assessment, a gap analysis is performed, and a tailor-made action plans are developed for a better alignment with SDGs. The objective of this process is to incentivize the companies to improve their corporate performance on SDGs by providing more favorable loan terms and improving the pricing terms in line with their assessed impacts. TSKB's this model has firstly applied for a food and beverage company in 2020. And moreover, this model has been applied to additional companies for operating in different sectors such as textiles, automotive, etc. Before closing this part, I would like to add a few words on the actions we are doing about SDGs. In addition to our SDG mapping and SDG loan model applications, in 2021, our investment banking team also have intermediated new SDG-related financial instruments, such as the first SDG-related lease certificate issuance on the behalf of an energy firm. And also, we have intermediated to a low carbon economy transition bond issuance for another distribution company last year. If we come to our expectations from this valuable study, as TSKB, we are always striving to take our current SDG work further with the vision of our Sustainability Management Committee, and of course with our Executive Board's initiations. In this context, we would like to thank IDFC and Natixis for their contributions. We really care about this valuable work and find it very valuable. Our expectations from the current SDG Alignment Study is to provide us with additional contribution and perspective at the point of the whole of a bank approach, which is also stated, and the other panelists underlined the three dimensions of it. We have so much effort on entity level and also in activity level applications for SDGs. But in addition to that, we would like to improve our work to have an ex-post SDG assessment, and also we would like to measure negative impacts as well as positive impacts or contributions to SDGs. At this point, we believe in cooperation between IDFC members For example, we can learn more from AFD's best practice of SDG rating tool, as Ms. Marian underlined in the previous session. For positive negative impact measuring, there may be, let's say, workshops for expertise exchange. We would be very happy to share our knowledge and learn from your expertise. And finally, I took too much time, I know. Thanks for your patience. To sum up all of these views, we follow, we follow country level targets and try to understand the expectations of our stakeholders also. We think that SDG alignment will provide invaluable guidance in integrating issues into our current work and creating a common language as we all willing to. Thus, the quality of disclosures will be improved and we will be avoiding SDG washoffs. These are all I would like to mention today. If you have any questions, we can continue Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Ms. Nihal, thank you. Thank you kindly for sharing the viewpoint from the TSKB stand. And really some interesting things you mentioned there as well. Something that really caught my attention is this SDG certificate for an energy company. I think I'm really curious to see that. That's quite interesting, actually. And if we can get to that point, that's I think a fundamental shift into how we can really encourage that specific sector into working with SDGs and understanding that. Very interesting, and I also second your call to enhanced synergy and effort and work between the IDFC members. I think this is something we all agree upon. With that in mind, I'd like to give the floor now to Safira Patel from the Development Bank of South Africa. Safira, again, the same kind of thought process here. Tell us a little bit about what you do there at the bank and what's your institution SDG alignment efforts are, and how do you foresee this IDFC commission study to fit into your operations and expected challenges or benefits of that? Safira, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and the DBSA to this panel. I think it's a very valuable discussion that's already taken place so far. Maybe if I could just start with DBSA itself. So we're a development finance institution that operates across the African continent. Our mandate is to support the development of infrastructure with the aim of facilitating sustainable development. And we work within the sectors of ICT, water, sanitation, energy, transport, health, and education. We also work with various other partners, IDFC partners, but we also work through and work with the GCF, JEF, and various other institutions, both local and international. From a sustainable finance perspective, I would like to just go back to what Marian mentioned, that as a DFI, all our work is based in sustainable development. And that's a good way for me to move into the fact that what we do at the DBSA, what we currently have in place is we have what we call our development results framework. That guides how we monitor, how we report, how we evaluate from a non-financial perspective. So focus purely on the developmental, sustainable and development effectiveness aspects. And with that in mind, when we developed the DRRF, we developed it in a manner that didn't specifically focus on the SDGs, but speaks to the SDGs and facilitates reporting in alignment with the SDGs. So we don't have a specific SDG marker at the moment, or anything specifically that says, okay, this is a SDG focus, this is the SDG lens we use, but we speak broadly to sustainable development. What we also have is we've got obviously our ESG safeguards, we've got a development results working group. That's a working group that looks at all our investments and makes recommendations to the investment committee on the developmental impact of any project. It also is the committee where we discuss the indicators that should be used for monitoring. And in the event we really don't see any value, we usually discuss that from a developmental perspective. However, we do not make decisions based on that. That's IC and our investment committee does that. With respect to the studies, what I really do think is critically important is the manner in which it highlighted the SDGs and the focus on SDGs. Because again, as DBSA, we had a more broad focus on general sustainable development. So when we did our evaluations, we would reflect on the SDGs and how the project sat within that discussion. When we do our annual development results monitoring, we would reflect on what aspects of our book for that year spoke to the delivery of SDG goals from an impact and output perspective. But we wouldn't specifically have this highlighted SDG view, which I think this study has really brought to the fore, and which is something that we will be using going forward. It would also support us. For example, we have a green bond already, but we're working on an SDG linked credit line. So the study will enable us to better position ourselves from the monitoring, reporting, evaluation, and general impact focus perspective to support the credit line and to be able to report on. So the accountability aspect would be very, very important for us. Key elements of the study that really I found very interesting, or very beneficial rather, would be the localization of the SDGs. Often there's been a tendency to just focus on the SDGs without really thinking about the key focus for us as an organization, but as a region as well. And incorporating that into how we put together our SDG lens over our existing work, over our development results framework, over how we invest, I think is going to play a critical role and a very supportive role as well. Additionally, the one element that I think is becoming more and more important within the sector that we work in is the negative spillover. People tend to start focusing on one thing. For example, if we're talking within the just transition, decarbonization, people focus on the decarbonization a great deal more. Then people would then consider the other elements, maybe the social or the biodiversity, the various other elements. So the highlighting of that as an issue and to make sure we don't cause any negative impact is also, for me, I found particularly important. In many examples, the knowledge and the value is present within the organization, but you're not always speaking to the different teams within the organization. And by highlighting these aspects in the study, I think it's really going to be very beneficial to the organization and to how we go forward. I think the last element that maybe I just would like to speak to is how the SDG return adjusted tool, I think that would be incredibly beneficial to us. And we really look forward to possibly piloting and working with the IDFC and the study to see how we can bring that into our organization, because that would give us a much better lens to also look at how we fund, where we direct our funding, and also to see how we can better and increase our development effectiveness and our impact, but using the SDGs as that umbrella, as that focus. Often we tend to look at our SDGs from a retrospective perspective, or to say, oh, we've done this, and there we go, there we have the impact. But we need to start thinking about the impact making as opposed to impact taking. And I really found that very interesting in this as well. And I think this study is going to help us tremendously with respect to that. So moving towards the impact making, I think is going to be helpful. And I think the tool would be particularly important and beneficial to us as an organization. And then maybe lastly, just, going forward, we look forward to the implementation and further discussion, exploration with the IDFC partners, and to see how we can bring these tools and findings of the study into our organization. I think it's going to be incredibly beneficial for us, and we really do look forward to that and taking that forward.
Thank you, Safira. Thank you for that, your viewpoint from the DBSA stand, and really, I think you hit the nail with the localization of SDGs. I think this is a fundamental, ultimately, because we all have, as we mentioned from the beginning, different mandates and capacities, and we want to make sure that we're able to speak to our constituents and have them understand the effort and the reasoning behind our investments. And also, I'm delighted to also hear that you have your development sustainable framework. And that's, I think, a key, platform, if you will, or process for any institution to really understand how they're going about with their development impact. Now, I'd like to welcome our last guest. He's the director of our department here at ICD, Dr. Mohammed Al-Yami. Again, the same question to you, Doctor, is if you care to tell us how ICD is working towards SDG alignment and how do you see, or this study from IDFC, how would it fit into the operations or the benefits and opportunities that it could pose for our ICD? Dr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Talal. I hope you can hear me well. Bismillah wa salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Well, first of all, again, I would like to thank the panelists for the insightful thoughts that they share with us. It's not just thought, actually, it's an action that has been implemented most likely. So this is wonderful. As you can see, I'm sitting at the World Global Government Summit in Dubai, and at every single plenary session, technical discussions, round tables, the SDG is there. Even when they are talking about politics, the subject of SDG will be brought up. So this is a subject that need to be tackled. COVID-19 was, seriously harming the achievement that has been accomplished so far, despite the fact that even before the COVID, the target wasn't met as planned. So what we are doing as ICD, as also the IDFC group members here, is really trying hard to capture the SDGs achievements and contribution by our activities. We are doing this in many different ways. We have been working on tools and systems to really strengthen our, capability to report on the SDGs. We are still working on these tools. Just the week before last week, we are putting on test some grading mechanism system that will hopefully see the light and be implemented fully towards the end of the year. It has been there since last year, but I think it needs some, rethinking of how to implement. The whole system of ICD now is very well situated among the whole process of our investments. I wasn't planning to show slides, but I think I will, just to make it easy for you to follow, slides from a previous presentation. So let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay,
you can make full screen if you would like. There you go.
Sure. Yeah. So as you can see here, I'll just present a few slides just to make it easy for you to follow. When we started this SDG process in 2015, immediately with the announcement of this, we start to think what are the focus of ICD, and throughout, I would say, 2 to 3 years, we have been determined that we have directly targeted 3 SDGs, which is the clean energy and the decent, work, and also the infrastructure. These, by default, will impact other SDGs. So from the exercise, from the practice, from the analysis that we have been doing, we realize that the full framework of our ICD will directly and indirectly will impact 10 SDGs. So we added to the 3 core SDGs, we added the partnership, which is really there all the time. We work with many multilateral development institutions, with local partners, with agencies. So that's there. And also the climate change, because we always look to the impact, not to do harm, maybe negative impact plus positive. That will indirectly will impact SDGs 1 through 5. It's of course maybe hard to measure, but we are trying to improve our system every year. So that in mind, our 10-year strategy 2019-2029 was built based on this, ICD prioritization. And the three main pillars again is the job supported, and the target is to have almost 550,000 jobs by 2029, supporting almost 100,000 MSMEs, and also giving access to Islamic finance, because that's actually what ICD is doing. Islamic finance is to 1 million individuals. We are keeping track of these numbers. Every year we have our annual development effectiveness survey, which we share with our clients, and they share it with even their end clients if it's line of finance or a product. That will give us every year figures. It's not 100% accurate because it's based on the response rate, which sometimes 85%, sometimes it's 70%, and so it's not stable based on the collaboration with partners and the time of sending the survey. Here is an example of how we actually try to make this more, and I apologize, just before my presentation, I just highlight the name of the client. I thought it's maybe just a privacy not to share the name of the clients, but the countries, the size, and the SDGs that will be impacted is there. And this is not an outcomes. This actually as a pre-assessment of our investments. So based on the figures that we have here, based on the SDGs, when we are doing our annual development effectiveness survey, we will compare those figures just to see how accurate was or were our assessments. Now, interesting figures that we have from this year. This is still fresh. It should be presented in our annual development effectiveness report in June, but I thought I'll just share it with you and with the audience. If we go to see our clients' interests and area of focus, we found out that our client focus on the 3 SDGs is almost 80%. So the area of our focus is actually covered by or prioritized by 80% of our clients, which really make us feel confident about the strategy, and also make us feel happy that we have communicated this well through our internal partners and also the external clients of ICD. Last slide, I think I will go for. Yeah, this is the last slide. So reaching this point give us even more responsibility to walk further miles by enhancing the systems, by trying to communicate these figures with the ICD management, with the board, and also with external clients, and build the awareness, communicate and actually coordinate with bodies like IDFC. The report by Nexus is very interesting one, and it's good that we still have a challenge and had discussion among us at IDFC level about the report, which will see the light soon. But it's a very interesting topic, very challenging one. The governments are talking about it. public sectors, private sector, the non-for-profit sector talking about this. So I think we are satisfied with the level of ICD for now, and we are improving ourselves every year. I think I'll stop here, Talal.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Very also interesting to see the ICD's clients with this fresh information you shared with us just now, how they too are aligned with the ICD targeted SDGs, and that's quite comforting, as you mentioned. Okay, so what I like to do now, we don't have too much time left, and I do want to keep at least 5 to 7 minutes towards the end so we can give a chance to everybody to have a 1-minute closing remark. But we have some questions here in the chat room, and I like to open up this question, and we'll start off maybe in the same order. If each panelist can give us maybe 30 seconds to 45 seconds in their part on answer to this question. So I'll start off with a very high-level question here. It says, DFIs are norm-setting organizations even before the pandemic. So would you agree that the onus is now even greater upon these organizations to leverage partnerships and mold policies within their own jurisdictions to attain SDGs and accelerate recovery? So Marie, if you care to answer, give us an answer to this question. I can repeat it if needed.
So if I understand correctly, the question is about the role of the DFI and that has been increased after the pandemic and the crisis. So I guess this is the reality. As mentioned during at the beginning, obviously public development banks are the key role to play to achieve these SDGs that have been hurt by the pandemic. And that's why we are working here together, and we launched this study to be able to have kind of a common language, common methodology, and common tools then to be able to disseminate and to share with other actors, because we are not alone in this journey. So we mentioned the private sector, we mentioned other actors as the government, for example, to be able to disseminate our methodology and our standards. And obviously, because we know that the finance we can provide will not be insufficient to achieve the SDGs at the end. So as a IDFC, the way we are seeing things is a little bit the same way as we did for climate finance. As you know, we partner with multilateral development banks to come with common principles back in 2015, and then based on this common principle, we report now and on the same way, and we have the same methodology to report on the climate finance. On the same way, we could do we could have common methodology and common tools with multilateral development banks. And we, as you know, we initiate a dialogue with investors last year during the Finance in Common Summit, because we organized a session for a dialogue between public development banks and investors to start thinking about a common language. And we are pursuing this dialogue, including also regulators. So we think that all together, we have to bring our methodology and our way of progressing in this journey to make sure that we are all on track. I don't know if it answered the question.
Yeah, that's fine. And Dr. Kadek, what's your take on how the responsibilities now of DFIs and TPSMI in ensuring their clients also accelerate SDGs after the pandemic? Can you speak a little bit about that, Dr. Kadek?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Talals. I want to start by seeing the characteristic of the pandemic crisis, because the pandemic limits our mobility and also direct interaction. So it affects actually the sectors related to the mobility, like for example, transportation sectors and also tourism sectors. So we can see from the data that in the global economy contracting significantly, and also from our country as well, the poverty increase and unemployment increase. Of course, this is affect the SDGs aspects, right? So based on the study, I like also the findings of the study from IDFCs that our members has significant roles as counter-cyclical policies during the crisis. This is actually our roles to recover our economy faster. Related to the PTSMI, because we have mandates to finance the infrastructure development during the pandemic, we have also programs to give loans for the local governments because they have limited capacities to finance the infrastructures program. So we give loans in collaborations with the Ministry of Finance. So it helps to recover the economy at the regional levels and also at the national levels. So the pandemic actually increase our awareness as the development financial institutions, that the developments not only about the economics, but it's also related to the broader aspects to make our economy resilience and also recover in the long terms, or sustainable in the long term. So that's why SDG alignments is becomes a very important actually in this case to make our economy resilience and recovers sustainable, has a sustainable recovery. That's, I think, my opinions about the important roles of the development financial institutions.
Very sound opinion, Doctor. Very sound opinion, and I like how you mentioned this counter-cyclical responsibilities of DFIs to help really, let's say, put more gas into the economies and accelerate this recovery. Marian, can you touch base a little bit on maybe providing a little answer to this question?
Yeah, thanks. Really, our role as DFI are financing, not implementing, but financing projects and policies. So what we see with the post-pandemic and what we try to do is accompanying the countries where they see the diagnosis is, where their diagnosis is around SDG achievement, and where I would say the less tackled SDG and the one that has suffered the most with the pandemics. And on our side, trying to channel our financing where we see there could be more impact toward those policies or projects. We've been seeing a lot of impact on inequalities and demand on working on that topics, because inequalities have quite expand. And so that social agenda is more and more important within the dialogue we have with our country clients, and knowing that tackling also the equilibrium between climate, environment, and social, because as we were saying, like interactions and impact shouldn't choose one or the other. So really in the financing we've been doing, we have seen those two pillars really important, and particularly the inequality focus, reducing it to inequality focus, and what we rate under our social dimension. And also, as Kadek was saying, all the topic of recovery and jobs, and for sure economy, and strengthening on the topic of decent jobs and projects that may have a positive impact on this economic recovery.
Very well. So that's the idea, like don't leave anybody behind and concentrate on the ones that really were hurt from this pandemic. And Nihal, can you give us your thoughts on this question?
Of course. Thank you very much. I would like to add a few words on this subject. As the pandemic has started and not really finished yet, our role as DFIs in this crucial decade in terms of funding and financing, we have to reiterate and reinforce our commitments to support common actions in line with SDGs. And also in the early stage, we just think about the economic aspects of this pandemic, but especially the climate issue became more important in this period. And the studies here gained weight, most importantly, to have a common ground on this subject also. We have to be more mobilized, and we have to finance directly to the areas in need. And so as well as doing this, we will come up with sustainable recovery and resilient measures having long-term impact on the world. And I also saw a question in Q&A part, which is also addressing the pandemic and realistic targets after the pandemic period. If the previous words I have said can be done, and then we can set midterm and long-term targets, and to determine the milestones to achieve these targets, monitor accountability and exchange all of our thoughts on this subject. So it's important to measure what is the situation against targets, and without seeing our impact, we have to be agile and resilient of the impacts of this pandemic. So these are, I would like to add on this subject.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The agility, of course, of DFIs is I think, profound. They really need to figure out how we can be a little bit more faster to the market and help accelerate this recovery. Safira, can you touch base a little bit about your thoughts on the role of DFIs to help accelerate the recovery after the pandemic, and especially with regard to SDG alignment?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think for us, I think the pandemic has highlighted the inequalities basically across the world that society is facing every day. And in so doing, it's also increased the importance and highlighted these inequalities, which then enables us to better direct funding and financing and projects and activities towards those areas. I think it's also highlighted the need for the different players within the sustainability and just transition discussion to come together. For example, biodiversity, climate, and health. Often people don't think health is part of that, and health is a key part of the just transition and the biodiversity and climate change discussion. So bringing the partners together, I think, is really important. And I think DFIs play a very specific role in not only opening the discussions, directing where funding goes, but also creating and facilitating the programs and the policies and supporting the programs and the policies with respect to the more sustainable approach to coming back to, how we're going to rebound from the pandemic and continue to focus on sustainability. And then also lastly, I think DFIs have a very important role to play in the crowding in or leveraging of the different types of funding, development of models, and also, tools and funding models, but also in ensuring that we're able to bring in the private sector into an area that they may not feel or may find it very difficult to enter. So in breaking the barriers for funding and co-funding and public-private partnerships. I think DFIs have a particularly important role to play. And in one way, the pandemic has just focused where we direct our funding.
Very good. The crowded in and with the taking that, creating the market or going back to the market is very fundamental, as you said. Dr. Mohammed, can you offer us your thoughts on the role of DFIs and helping to accelerate recovery?
Well, I think, I will come from a different angle regarding the question. Maybe I will be off track a bit, but what we have and you learn from the COVID-19 that we at so many aspects we were almost ready to be, you know, to stand up against the pandemic. The technology in many countries were from next day we're there. So schooling from home, working from distance, even medical and health consultation from distance was there. Economy, despite all the fact that it has been hardly hit, but in many areas the resilience was there, the sustaining the business was there. So I think we need to build on these good example and successful story to be prepared for the next catastrophe, next pandemic. It will happen. I mean, we are not 100% protected, and that's will not the DFIs will not be an exception. It will be among this global ecosystem and providing their products, providing their services, doing sometimes even the due diligence in a more effective and efficient way that will help those in need. I wouldn't say left behind, but those in severe need of DFI's support and help. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Doctor. In 30 seconds or less to each one of you as a closing remark, is there like a call of action that the IDFC members would like to share or have or launch through this session? So in 30 seconds or less, and again, we'll go back to you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Talal. So my call for action would be to pursue this very interesting analysis and work with a consultant and among the IDFC members to build collective roadmap for members on this SDG alignment topic, and to bring all interesting tools and approaches that the panelists today presented and that they have in their bank to make sure that we pull all this together to have this collective roadmap, and then to be able to disseminate beyond the circle of IDFC, and to talk with other partners, with all the multilateral development banks, with the private sector as well, to make sure that we have all together an impact. Thank you.
Very good. And Dr. Kadek?
Yeah, I like one's level actions proposed by the study is about the external engagements to align the SDGs. I think we need to collaborate with wider partners because SDGs is the public good. So we have to collaborate between the DFIs and also international partners, governments, and the private sectors. This is the way we accelerate the alignments of our policies into the SDGs. So I really appreciate these symposiums and discussions, and also thanks to the IDFC Secretariat for the study. This becomes guidelines and also benchmarks for our institutions, especially PTSMI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kadek. And Marian, your last thoughts here on this?
Yes, thanks a lot. On the same pace, I would say like alliance is key. And this is really a call for coalition, not only of DFIs, but we have to mobilize all the financing world around this. And the idea really is to try to channel the maximum on operations with positive impact, and try to shift from the non-sustainable operations or policies that are still financed. And they're really in an urgency to do it in order to meet that 23 agenda. That's it. Thanks a lot, and really thanks for this opportunity today.
We really appreciate you here. Just hang on tight for 1 second here. Don't leave us just yet. Thank you for that. And we'll go to Nihal.
Thank you, Talal, Mr. Talal. I would like to again thank to all panelists for their contribution. This is a great chance to exchange our views and expertise on this subject. And as I mentioned in my speech, again, I would like to underline that we have to cooperate and collaborate on this subject more often. Maybe we can, again, I would like to say, make some workshops, or we have to try the tools and we have to share the outputs of these efforts more closely than before, I guess. And as Ms. Marian said, not only the DFIs, the whole financing world would be agree on this subject. This is a crucial point, and we have a long journey ahead of us. So I would like to thank you again to all participants.
Thank you, Nihal. And Safira, your thoughts?
I basically would like to say I echo what all the other participants have said already, so I don't want to belabor the point. But for me, I think the most important would be the partnerships and the importance of it. I mean, just to take today, the knowledge that I gained from directly interacting with fellow IDFC members has been incredibly helpful for us going forward. I don't think we should lose these opportunities. We should build on them to create deeper impact. And I think deepening the partnership is where we would go, and we would really love to see much more depth and impact and sharing and data and implementation coming out of this.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And Dr. Mohammed, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, sure. I think the most common word is more collaboration. I think that's a must, and we see the benefit of that. But also, I would like to add a call for action to test our our system that we are all together under the IDFC are coming up with as a results of these studies and report. Test it, then share it. So, yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so with that, basically, we would like to close our session for today. So really, again, so the ambitious SDG alignment really means, I think what I'm taking away from this is moving beyond the strategy level to mainstream SDG priorities within our internal operations. And I think for us as DFIs, we really need to set social responsibility strategies that are important and ensure they're relevant with our clients that we're working with. And we need to make sure that we're able to clearly send this message to our clients. And by developing and delivering solutions to the achievements and alignment of the SDGs, I think as IDFC members and as DFIs, we will discover, I think, more opportunities for growth and to also lower our overall risk of portfolios. So with that, I conclude this session today. But before you leave, I'd like to hand the mic back over to our moderator, Zakaria, and I think there will be a group photo. So keep that in mind. And on behalf of this panel, I also once again thank the coordinators, Brother Zakaria and his team, and the colleagues at Thiqa team for this opportunity for us to discuss this very dynamic or robust topic. Brother Zakaria, the floor is back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Talal, for your skillful moderation, and to our distinguished panelists for their insightful interventions. I will ask you just to look at your camera lens and smile, or smize as they call it nowadays. Smile with your eyes and hold it for a few seconds. Wonderful. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. We can adjourn the session. For our audiences, please stay online. We have another session starting at 1 p.m., which is in the next 25 minutes. We appreciate your participation. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
To meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.